button done up.
I'm very relaxed, as you can tell. I've been stretching.
I'm not quite sure how you do it. You're still working as a brain surgeon in and out of Sydney?
Yeah, just in Sydney, unfortunately. It used to be in and out of Sydney. Like almost half the year I was overseas operating, but now it's just purely Sydney.
Do you still do a lot of work with that? You've got your own foundation, haven't you?
Yeah.
Do you still get, with COVID, do you get much opportunity to get over there and...
No, it's not good. COVID's been terrible. I mean, they talk about the collateral casualties of COVID, and I think it's pretty well underestimated how many people have died, become ill, had quality of life issues affected by COVID. It's just, it's pretty devastating. So, I used to operate on kids overseas who had tumours that no one else could take out, and I still get those emails coming in every week and I can't get to them. So, a kid died last week that I'm sure I could have saved if I'd been able to go overseas. It's pretty bad.
Because one of the questions I wanted to ask you is, because we were talking to, I forgot his name. Who's the 5-hour bloke? Ollie, is it?
Ollie's the one that puts in touch.
Yeah, and he was saying they say you're a bit of a hero in the space because you will operate on, well, it's like there's two sides of the coin, but they say you'll operate on people that most other surgeons won't operate on.
Yeah, I guess I've developed a reputation for that. It's not a reputation that I really wanted to get because I thought that what I was doing was pretty mainstream, but it turns out that probably 90% of the cases I do are cases that everyone else has considered too hard or too futile. And that's the rub. That's the controversy. So if it's too hard, then, they say, well, I've got skills that other people don't have, and that's fine. But when I operate on someone who they consider futile, in other words, it's cancer, they're in their 70s, it really isn't worth it, is it? And I operate on those people and they do well, that's when it becomes a little bit sort of acrimonious with my colleagues. And that's where I get the label of being a bit of a maverick and a bit of a cowboy. But bottom line is, I don't think I'm a maverick, I don't think I'm a cowboy. I just operate on people who want to be, who don't want to die yet. And I get good results and bad results. The good results are great and the bad results are terrible. But most people, well, not most people, almost all people won't resent the fact that they had surgery, even if it was unsuccessful, because they clearly had this will to live still. They weren't prepared to die, and they knew the odds, and they took a chance. And even though it didn't work, they don't feel badly about it.
Because I can't imagine being in that position where they're like, oh, look, mate, we can operate, but there's not much chance, so fuck it, just go and make peace with dying, and we'll catch you around. I don't know if I could deal with that. I would be like, no, somebody give it a go.
Well, look, I feel the same way, and a lot of people who aren't looking down the barrel feel the same way. But until you're actually in that position, it's like you guys, until you're actually in the position of, facing death, head on, it's very hard to know how you'd react. I mean, I'd like to think that I'd have the courage to keep fighting and that life is very precious and all those cliches that we use about, facing death. But gee, a lot of people don't do it. A lot of people do give up, and a lot of people listen to those conservative doctors who say there's nothing else can be done, and they just accept it and roll over and die. I would like to think that I would question it. I'd like to think that I'd have the courage to, go somewhere else for surgery or, consult some maverick somewhere who would give me that 1% chance. But no, a lot of people don't. And I think a lot of it is all due to, I don't know, it's, doctors have this very authoritative sort of role and position, and it's almost like some people accept their word as gospel. So, once your doctor says nothing can be done, it's like, oh, okay, fine. You're the skilled one. You're the one who knows what he's talking about, and I'll just listen to you and accept it. And there are others who just won't accept it, and they're the ones who come to see me.
Is that like a do you notice a difference when people get told, hey, look, this is probably it, we can't help you, and their coping mechanisms, not a placebo effect, but like kind of the opposite, they just give up and they deteriorate quite quickly?
Oh no, that's well documented. No, that's not bullshit, that's real. I guess another way of asking the question is, can you will yourself to die, and can you will yourself to live? And the answer is absolutely yes. No, there are people who I've seen personally who didn't want to live. Like I remember looking after a sailor who was in the Sydney to Hobart yacht race. A boom came around, hit him on the back of the head. He came in completely quadriplegic, and he was on a ventilator. We could have kept him alive for years. But he willed himself to die. And I've seen other people will themselves to die. And conversely, I've seen other people who really should have died with terminal illnesses and terrible aggressive cancers, and they seem to live longer than they should, simply because they've got this amazing will to live. You can call it placebo, that's just a name for it, but the power of the brain is something that is... it is a phenomenon, and it's untapped. It's considered. Barack Obama decided to fund mapping of the human brain simply because he knew that it was the last frontier, and that tapping and mapping and understanding the human brain could be way more beneficial for humanity than exploring space, for example. So I had the privilege of being the first Australian non-politician to address the US Congress on this very issue, that the brain is this amazing organ. It has huge untapped potential. It can do things like kill you or make you live. It can do things like, get rid of cancer. Believe it or not, there's even a study that shows that if you're taking a tablet you think might be thinning out your blood, so it's a sugar tablet, you're told that it thins out your blood, and they do blood tests on you after you take that sugar tablet, your blood is thinner. And so that's crazy. It's crazy. That's how powerful the mind is. And it's an untapped potential. We barely know the tip of the iceberg when it comes to knowledge about the brain.
Let me jump in, Mex. So I'll jump in and steer this conversation down a complete rabbit hole, and then Mex will pull us back online. So before we go further than this, have you been tracking Elon Musk's Neurolink?
Yes, for several reasons. One, because I respect the man, and I always like listening to what he has to say. He thinks outside the box. And secondly, because we now have software that can map the functionality of the brain, not an image that shows the structure of the brain, but an image that shows how the brain is functioning. And I strongly believe that Neuralink is going to need that software. So I think there's going to be future collaboration between Elon Musk and myself and my company, because this whole concept of brain-machine interfacing is pretty phenomenal. And he's already tapped into it. He wants to sort of put grids on the brain that then sense what the brain's thinking or what the brain wants you to do, connect that to a machine, and that machine will do it for you. So this has huge potential for people who are quadriplegic or have spinal injuries of any description, because it means that instead of trying to regenerate the spinal cord, which is something that we haven't been able to do successfully at all, we can now bypass that spinal cord and just use machine brain interfacing. There are videos online where you see a person with a grid on their brain in the language area, and they are thinking they want to say something. They're not saying it, okay? They're not mouthing it. They're thinking something like, the sun is hot, something like that. And the machine says the sun is hot. So these machines can actually pick up your thoughts, not only your actions. So I've seen the videos also of BMI, brain machine interfacing, where the patient thinks they want to pick up a cup and the robot picks up the cup. And even though that's pretty fascinating and phenomenal, it's not quite as phenomenal as someone thinking a thought and the machine coming out and actually saying it. So yeah, I have a vested interest in it because I strongly believe he's going to need our program to know where to put those grids, because our program can tell you now exactly where that part of the what parts of the brain are important for different functions of the brain.
I mean, mate, it excites me, but it also makes me super nervous. Like, from someone like me listening to you talk like that, I'm like, we are a generation away from mind control.
Oh my God! You think about RoboCop. RoboCop is real now. So one of my favourite movies. But yeah, so that whole idea of if you can keep the brain alive, there is potential to build a body around that brain based on BMI, brain-machine interfacing.
That's phenomenal. So we effectively are one generation away from living forever. How do you...
No, I don't think it is. I think it's this generation. I think in your lifetime, maybe not in mine, but in your lifetime, you'll see robots controlled by the human brain.
How do you legislate that? Or how do you control that for the human population? There's already 7 billion of us. Is it the rich are going to get this? Is it the terminally ill will get this? I mean, how will it be conceptualized into society, I suppose?
Yeah, no, there are already ethicists considering things like that. Because you're right, it does have ethical issues. But if you look back in history, you'll always see that the rich always get it first. I mean, look at healthcare, look at clean water, look at vaccinations. It's always the rich countries or the developed countries and the rich in the rich countries who get the priorities. And then, of course, it trickles down. So that's not something that's new. I'm not saying it's fair or it's right, but it's certainly seen in history. And in terms of augmenting the brain, well, again, on a very simplistic level, just think about this. What is education? Education is augmenting your brain. It's basically making your brain better. And so one step further is maybe augmenting your brain through machines or through, I'm using transcranial magnetic stimulation to improve my patients with brain tumours who have had strokes or deficits. And TMS is essentially a magnet, non-invasive, incredibly low risk profile that will stimulate the brain and improve plasticity and make the brain more malleable so that you can compensate for deficits, neurological deficits. Well, TMS technicians who have been around for 3 decades will tell you they give themselves TMS before they have to write a grant because it makes them more intelligent. So there are intelligence networks. There are networks or hubs in the brain that we can now identify with this software that we can potentially stimulate to make someone more intelligent. And that has huge ethical issues as well. But again, the ethicists boil it down to a very simple fact, and that is that throughout mankind's history, we have always tried to augment our intelligence. If it's not through education, it's through using aids or using different techniques, and this is just one step further. But it's fascinating. It's a fascinating issue, and like I say, it's here now. You guys are going to see it in your lifetime for sure.
Maybe we're going to have to get Jess to start, or maybe me before I do TMS. I can't believe it, mate. My mind's blown away. The implications of that. Wow. I've got to take 2 seconds.
No, it has huge implications. We're already in conversation with DOD in the US because, as you guys are acutely aware, unfortunately, returned servicemen, there's a certain percentage will get PTSD. And they've often wondered why that happens. I mean, why is it that you send 100 soldiers to war, 90 of them come back and they're perfectly fine, they assimilate back into the community, they don't have any issues, and 10% have terrible issues of PTSD? Well, it's a huge burden on society in terms of financial cost and personal cost. So it wouldn't be good if we could identify people who have the potential to get PTSD, modify their brains so they don't get PTSD, or identify them so they don't go to the front line and that will be a huge cost saving and personal saving for countries. So our software has potential to identify those people. We can now map a brain and pick if you are depressed, anxious, have obsessive compulsive disorder, PTSD, autism, etc., etc. So this is a huge step forward in how to map the brain, how to diagnose mental illnesses, and then potentially how to treat and prevent mental illnesses as a future line. It's huge implications.
They're going to take that up. If you think about the average cost of a soldier that comes back with PTSD in Australia, their payouts are in excess of six figures. The cost of a Class A pension is in excess of 80% of their wage for the rest of their life. Yeah. And they were talking about percentages of PTSD in Australia. We spoke about this before, but this statistic was pretty fun and interesting for me. Is that Fallujah vets in America who fought in some of the bloodiest campaigns in Iraq, their PTSD rates were about like 12-15%, something like that. Whereas Australian veterans are coming back with PTSD rates who didn't fight in those particularly intense traumatic theaters in excess of 30-something%. So there's other two things going on there. We're not training them and we're not preparing them, or we're not. Maybe our pre-selection process is poor, or there's a little bit of fraudulent activity going on.
Yeah, one or other, or all of the above. Yeah. But it is a huge burden on society financially and socio-economically, because you think about these people. These are good people. Can you imagine what they can contribute to society if they came back and assimilated and used all those skills that they learned in the army and by going overseas, and they'd have an amazing perspective on life? Well, we're losing them, and they could be potential CEOs, they could be potential politicians who could actually contribute a huge amount to our society, but they're lost. They're lost. It's a terrible burden. So if we can come up with a program that could identify those people who are going to get it, and either prevent them from getting it because we don't send them to the front line, or give them TMS to get rid of that part of the brain that is dysfunctional, I mean, it's a huge gain on society. And we're right at the infancy stage of doing that. It's even further than that. We're probably at the adolescent stage. We're almost there.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds amazing. The only hurdle I can see is when you start to identify brain patterns that would stop someone, according to the new barriers, from joining the Defence Force, and then they find out that 90% of their recruiting campaigns are targeted towards those type of people, or easily malleable. What does Defence do then?
Oh my God! That's a huge ethical issue. You think about this: if we've got a program that can tell you how your brain is functioning, and we do, then we can diagnose things like not only depression and anxiety, but we can tell if you're an ambitious person or a happy person or a sad person, etc., etc. So, I can think of a day where a company goes, instead of doing one of those emotional tests on you to give you an emotional profile, they say, oh, you need to have a scan. And so, you're going to be picking people based on their scan. So if they've got a scan that looks abnormal, see you later. But again, the hope there is that the abnormal scan can be made normal. In other words, brains can be normalized and made more efficient using interventions. Now, TMS is just one of them. There's another thing called, direct current stimulation. There's all sorts of ways we can modify brain functionality. I'm sorry to say, but it is here. It's here to stay. It's the way of the future. And it's no different to identifying a good employee based on an emotional quotient or an IQ or a HSC result. And it's the same thing. You're handpicking your person based on whatever you've got available to you to tell you if that person's going to be a good employee or not. So we're just becoming a little bit more sophisticated about it now, that's all.
There's nowhere to hide. There's absolutely nowhere to hide with that. So, just circling back a little bit on sort of servicemen and then coming back from overseas. Have you heard much from Dr. Mark Gordon? He does the Warrior Angel Foundation stuff in America. I mean, he was on Joe Rogan a little bit, and he talks about repetitive blast injury and concussive traumas that are damaging the brain, and then therefore representing, or some of those signs and symptoms present themselves as PTSD, and then they are treating with hormonal like hormone replacement. Is that bullshit? Is that something you've had? I know I've probably just dumped it on you now, but
no, I haven't heard of him. I haven't heard the podcast, but I can tell you now that I agree with him 100% already, because it goes something like this. Remember, I've already made the statement that the human brain is an untapped potential. We have no idea how it works. You know, the information and knowledge about the brain is like a tip of the iceberg. It's amazing. You think about this, just by way of example. About 10% of people with autism are savants. You know, they're these amazing people who have amazing memories. They can memorize a telephone book, for example, sometimes 2 telephone books. So they can memorize the numbers, the addresses, and names of all these people in the telephone book and recall it just like that. Joe Smith, 114, Crescent Avenue, immediately. Phone number 999-47, like that. That's how brilliant these people are. They're savants. Okay, if you do an MRI scan of their brain, not this recent scan that I'm talking about, but a normal MRI scan of their brain, it looks exactly like yours and my brain. So it looks like a normal brain. And what that should tell you is that all of us have the potential to memorize a phone book. So there's this huge untapped potential of the human brain. Okay, and we don't know how to tap that potential. We have no idea. So when someone like Mark Gordon comes along and says, look, I believe, some of the brain dysfunction or functionality is due to this, this, and this. If anyone were to stand up and say, you're an idiot, you're bullshit, it's bullshit, that's the person who's the idiot, because really we have no idea. There's a thing called audiometry modification, where I was talking to a lady last night whose son was basically mentally retarded. That he had psychomotor retardation, he was 4 years of age, no doctors could pick what was wrong with him. He'd been on all these different medications, they diagnosed ADHD, all this kind of stuff. Anyway, she heard about this person who does audiometries, this or that. And so, in other words, she felt that she could modify his behavior through audiometry, through his hearing. And anyway, did all these treatments. I don't know what she did, but bottom line is that he became a normal kid after that. So when Mark says something like, PTSD is a reflection of constant bombardment of noises or explosions in someone's ear, it's not inconceivable that input, that audiological input, has modified the brain network so that it becomes dysfunctional. I don't know about it. I've never heard about it, but to me, it sounds pretty. It could be real.
Yeah, because
and I'd be very open-minded at that.
Yeah, because they talk about there's the explosions that go through and reverberate through people's brains from either experiencing the explosion or firing large caliber anti-material rifles, anti-tank rifles. And he sort of put it, what did he put it to? It's like footballers and concussive, trauma from tackling and constantly getting concussions and stuff like that.
Right.
But yeah, it's just...
Well, no, that's well documented. Concussions from trauma is well documented. You can actually see structural abnormalities of the brain. They get little sort of neuronal breaks and disruption of their long axons of the brain. But audiological trauma, in other words, noise affecting the functionality of the brain, is not something that has been documented before. But again, I don't think that's inconceivable. I really don't. I think that's very conceivable that could affect your brain functionality.
Yeah, I just and he talks about that. I think he's more with that physical trauma of the concussions and the knocking the brain around. I mean, even wearing the helmets that the boys wear when they're doing it is reverberating shockwaves through the brain that they keep saying. And he does it by they replace. They say it destroys some of the. I mean, it focuses. I don't know where he said. But is it the pituitary gland and the upregulation of hormones, and he replaces them with testosterone replacement therapy stuff?
Oh yeah, that's nothing new. That's nothing new. They've done hormonal studies on the pituitary gland and its and what it secretes on those NFL footballers, and I forget the figures now, but up to 60% of them have abnormalities of their stalk or the pituitary axis because of these constant reverberations and concussions. So no, that's not new. That's actually well documented.
Oof, that's good. Oh, we'll see how we go. I think there's somewhat weird because I mean the Australian Army doesn't recognise, or the Australian government doesn't recognise repetitive blast or concussive trauma. You have to have lost consciousness for 30 minutes or more for them to say, okay, you've suffered a brain injury.
Yeah. And you can't blame them because that's what the literature says.
Yep.
I mean, if you read those conservative textbooks on head injuries, and if you speak to most doctors, they strongly believe that because that's what we were taught. So they're just going with the narrative, the current narrative. You need people to think outside the box. You need people to accept change. You need people to be a little bit disruptive in their thinking, to accept other theories as to why people might get PTSD or brain injuries. And typically the medical fraternity is not that. They're a very conservative bunch of people. So too are politicians.
It takes about 10 years. Nutritional science is the only time that I've...
10 years? Are you kidding? Like, it takes fucking...
Longer.
Several generations for them to change. Just...
And that's...
No, 10 years is... No. You're looking at generations before people change their thinking. I mean, look at me. I'm widely vilified by my colleagues and condemned and persecuted simply because I came up with this new idea of operating on the brain through small keyhole incisions. And, patients do better, less trauma, better cosmetic result, less collateral damage to the brain. It's a no-brainer. And yet, look what's happening to me. So, no, I'm sorry. You can never be a prophet in your own lifetime or in your own country. It takes several generations to change people's thinking. And that's people in general. To change the thinking of a group of people who are, by definition, conservative, you're looking at several generations. Yeah.
It's a scary thought when it comes to brains. In this space anyway, brains and soldiers. That's the one bit that makes me nervous when current government standards say no, there's nothing wrong with your brain, and then I personally start to notice. Like, I'm only 35. I've noticed like words in my vocabulary are slowly fading away. And I mean, maybe I need more mental stimulation. I don't think so. I think we work too much as it is. But that's one thing I'm conscious of is not letting it slip. So I'm nervous that in 20, 30 years, when it's too late to do anything, then they start to accept, maybe there's some blast damage to your brain from back in the day.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. For them to accept that, it's going to take more than your lifetime, probably. Because, they get all these expert witnesses. They get all these doctors who sit in their ivory towers. They're not in touch with the common man. And they say to them, we want your expert opinion about, could this soldier have received, traumatic injuries to his brain just by being in the service and going to the front line? And, the doctors will read their books and they'll speak to other conservative doctors and they'll say no, and they'll support the government. And no, I'm sorry, but it's going to take a long time to get people to change their thinking.
Yeah. This is very similar to the army in their dogmatic approach. So you come up with a new technique or procedure for the current war zone you're in. You say, well, look, hey, what we've been doing doesn't work. It's getting people blown up. How about we do this? And they keep referring back to the doctrine. You're like, but somebody only ever just wrote that down. That didn't materialize. God didn't come down from the mountain and give that to us. Some omnipotent being. Somebody has wrote that down somewhere, and now it's written. Now it's gospel.
Yeah, that's right. It's called dogma, and it's the one thing that that unfortunately holds us back from making progress. Dogma. And you're absolutely right. Some person one day just wrote something down and suddenly it becomes gospel and no one questions it. And then one day someone comes up with questions and hang on, why are we doing it that way? And they show that's better. And oh my God, when you start questioning dogma, you start ruffling feathers and you change people's eminence. And I heard a great talk from a guy who talks about change, and the two things that are most resistant to change are age and eminence. So you've got these people who have become eminent and authoritative, and their whole raison d'etre is because they expound this theory, and then some young buck comes along and questions it. Oh my God, you are asking for trouble. So you're not going to get old people or eminent people to change because it's their raison d'etre, it's their reason for being.
Yeah, this was the same stuff that, was it Richard Dawkins? They started a foundation for, it was the Four Horsemen, and they started a foundation for priests trying to leave the church. They found out that they'd lived their whole life. They're 60 years old, and they maybe found that God wasn't for them and wasn't real. And now they're like, but I've just been a priest for 60 years and they're still working as priests. And they're like, I can't shift my whole mindset. They have I couldn't believe it.
The whole purpose has been, expounding that theory.
All right.
They just got to keep.
So we've got 30 years, and people in mine and Max's lifetime have lucked out because they won't change their mind. Is there anything we can do like day to day without going TMS or anything? Is there supplements? Is there exercises you can do to keep your brain younger, healthier, more active?
Oh yeah, again, there's literature to support lots of things that can actually improve brain health. If you categorise them into several major groups, the first one is sleep. And that has been shown definitively to improve brain health. So it's very difficult to actually identify an exact number that is ideal sleep. But for young people, it's probably anywhere between 8 and 9 hours. For most people, it's somewhere between 6 and 8 hours. And for older people, it's probably somewhere between 5 and 6 or 7 hours. So you'd certainly need less sleep the older you get, but someone at your age, in your 30s and your peak of life, you should be getting anywhere between 6 and 8 hours sleep a night. The next question that's asked about sleep is too much sleep bad for you? And the answer is actually yes. There's pretty good literature to show that any more than 10 hours sleep a night is actually bad for you. It's not good for you. So ideally, sleep will keep your brain optimal. The next one is diet. And this is incredibly burgeoning at the moment. This whole theory about how food, you are what you eat, all that kind of stuff. We used to think it was a bit of a housewife's tale that, it didn't really matter that much. But now it's been proven beyond any doubt that what you eat is actually what you are. And so if you eat poorly, or if you eat the wrong foods, or if you take too many antibiotics and change your microbiome, your gut bacteria, then you can really adversely affect your brain. But listen to this. This will really fascinate you. The current theory on the cause of Parkinson's disease is that it's all about an abnormal microbiome. So these gut bacteria that are abnormal get to the brain through the vagus nerve, affect the dopamine releasing cells, and give you Parkinson's. And there's actually evidence where if you cut the vagus nerve, you can actually treat Parkinson's. If you modify the microbiome, you can treat Parkinson's. So, oh my God, it's huge, this whole area of what you eat, making your brain healthy. And the next one, of course, is exercise. It's been shown clearly that exercise will improve memory. Again, what is too much and too little? Well, it's been sort of agreed upon that about 3 times a week, in other words, about 90 minutes a week of intensive exercise. So 3 times a week, 30 minutes each time, with another 30 minutes warming up and cooling down, is probably the ideal amount of exercise. brain aerobics is another one, and there's a good study to show that if you learn a language, a new language or a musical instrument after the age of, I'm sorry, I forget it now, but it's either 40 or 60, then you can stave off dementia for several years. And that's just the whole concept of the brain being an organ like any other organ, like a muscle that needs to be exercised. And if you exercise your brain, you can keep it functioning better for longer. And then there's the concept of toxins. This is a bit controversial. Like, exposure to EMF, for example, electromagnetic frequencies or electromagnetic radiation. Does that cause brain cancer? Does it cause brain disease of any description? What about other toxins like Agent Orange and nitrites and nitrates? And the list goes on and on and on. All a little bit controversial because it's not good studies. It's very hard to do a double-blinded, placebo-controlled study by giving a group of people a toxin and another group a placebo. So, but at least put it out there that there are some things that are very bad for your brain. Well shown. Alcohol, for example. There used to be that narrative that 2 glasses of wine a night was actually good for you. Or 2 servings of alcohol a day is actually good for you. Well, that's fucking bullshit now. A recent study sanctioned by the WHO has shown that, and this was looking at like 3,000 articles on alcohol and brain function, brain health, and it showed that the ideal amount of alcohol is 0. I'm sorry. So now alcohol's a terrible neurotoxin. Smoking is bad for your brain. Anyway, the list goes on and on and on. But if you look at all those categories, if you try and improve your brain health using all those different categories, you will keep it healthier for longer.
Mate, you've just given us the world's best advertising piece for the app. So our app is a proactive mental health app, and it's all about getting people sleeping better, eating better, training or moving their body, and there's personal growth in there too, which is kind of learning new hobbies and stuff. So we'll just take the last 10 minutes and use it as their ad for the next year or so.
Yeah, but I bet you cut out the alcohol bit.
100%.
Yeah, we'll leave that out for a minute. We'll leave that. But I want to come back to this, but that would be an issue, wouldn't it? If you get a bunch of heart researchers or the Heart Foundation pushes out, hey, we've done a study, red wine's really good for your heart, and then brain surgeons or neuroscientists come out and go, we've done a study and says alcohol is really bad for your brain. And then what do people believe? Is that the wine thing? Is it still being fought back and forward, or is it just 2 different departments going, I say yes, you say no?
I think this last article is pretty definitive. It was a huge study looking at thousands of articles on brain health and alcohol, and it came out saying 0 amount of alcohol is good for you.
Yeah, no, it sounds right.
I'm gonna have to come up with a new person.
Just remember, the whole concept of fake news has been around for centuries, and Trump will go down in the annals of history as being the inventor of the term fake news. But remember, fake news was used by Hitler and others. And so this whole concept of fake news is something that I think it's good that we all think about it, because you can't believe anything that you hear, They say you can't believe anything you hear and only half of what you see. Well, with Adobe Photoshop and all those sort of things, you can't believe anything you see now either. It's like, I don't know, I feel sorry for people because it's you're just bombarded with fake news. The fact that the meat industry, red meat's bad for you. I'm sorry, but it's bad for you. And but the red meat industry, they sponsor all these different societies. I'm not going to name them because I don't want to sort of have a contract out on me. But the bottom line is that many of those societies or many of those action groups that say, you've got to eat 2 servings of red meat a week and all this kind of stuff, they're actually sponsored by the red meat industry. So you've got to take everything you hear with a grain of salt.
I think that's the thing. I think that's the commodity going into the future is if you can sell truth and prove, like where people can come and trust your opinion and what you say, that is the new commodity of the future, I think, if you can sell truth.
Yeah, I've been voted Australia's most trusted person for many, many years in a row. And it's a great, I used to think, oh, shit, I'd much rather be, the most handsome bachelor or, this or that, or, the most eligible this. But when I distill that and think about it, it's a great accolade, because what it means is that actually people trust me. And, the reason they trust me is because I'm acutely honest, and I'm not politically correct, and I say things that get me into trouble. But at least, even if I polarize society, at least they go, well, we don't like what he's saying, we don't like him as a person, but at least he's telling the truth. Yeah, look, when they came out with that list of Australia's most trusted people, there were people on it that I thought, shit, they trust me more than that person. And it's because you can't trust politicians anymore, and you can't trust people who are paid by this or have this particular role or whose eminence depends on this or that, and because everything is tainted by your own sort of your own needs and your own sort of interests, as opposed to the greater good. That's the unfortunate thing about society today, and social media is not helping. When you look at someone's Instagram page and you see that they're living this ideal life, it kind of makes you a bit depressed, because you know that your life is not that ideal. Your marriage is not as good as that. Your figure's not as good as that. Your experiential history is not as colourful as theirs. And you start thinking, oh my God, I'm a loser. I've never been to Africa, and I've never, swum with the whales, and I don't have a six-pack, and my marriage is falling apart. But scrape under the surface of those Instagram accounts, and you'll find that very few of those people have the ideal life that they portray. But the trouble is, we all look at it, and we all get influenced in it, and we all get a bit of anxiety, and I had to say a bit of depression about it as well. So, it's a difficult situation. I don't know how we're going to manage it. I think eventually, hopefully, people will realise that that there's just so much falseness and so much duplicity in the world that they will start questioning everything. But then, of course, they'll question me. I don't want them to question me. But you know what I mean? It's what do you believe? Who do you believe?
Australia is the most atheist country one of the most atheist countries in the world. And is this a fallout from literally people don't believe in God anymore? They don't know who to believe. There's a big power vacuum per se. So now everyone can throw their hat in the ring. I mean, politicians are certainly not trustworthy. They are literally from winning votes, and they have to go with the majority. They get a poll that say, hey, veterans, we should do a royal commission this week because it's polling well, and then the next week they'll flip and change their mind. So that's purely on votes. They're going to go with the masses. And then, which brings me to another point that I wanted to bring up. Christopher Hitchens was a great orator, and he was an and he also with the Four Horsemen was Richard Dawkins, and Richard Dawkins has been accused of being an elitist because he is saying that maybe not everybody should be allowed to vote. Maybe the masses don't know what's good for them, and when lower socioeconomic groups are breeding more than doctors, scientists, where's the fix to that? And then how do we stem this torrent of mistruth perpetrated by social media and news outlets?
Oh my God, Max, do you really want to go there?
I don't know.
Oh my God. Okay, so let me say this much. There's two sides to every story. And there's no doubt that people who are well informed make better decisions, of course. So why shouldn't you have a level of information that someone must have before they determine the plight of a country? So that's that whole theory about, you shouldn't give the same power of the vote to someone who's misinformed or not informed versus someone who's informed. Okay. That's one argument. The next argument is that as a person who's always been taught by my mum that everyone has something to offer you, and I think that's why I resonate more with the public than I do with my elitist group of doctor colleagues, and that is that sometimes that opinion, sometimes the insight that you get from someone who's not an intellectual is probably more real than someone who is an intellectual. And what I'm saying is that the guy on the street, it's the whole concept of the pub test. And the pub test basically says, when you go into a pub where you've got some very simple folk, real people, the masses, and you make a statement and it doesn't pass that test, well, that should be the gold standard. And so those people who Richard says should not get the vote, in many ways, they're the people who I'd like to give the vote to, because they're the real people, and they're not influenced by academia, they're not influenced by intellectualism and, false interests and all that sort of stuff. They're actually real, and so maybe their vote should be more powerful than the person who intellectualizes or is influenced by money, or is in the back pocket of some politician. So there's two sides here. I don't know why you brought that up, Max. That's a really. I
don't know. I just thought this would be a good one. No. You managed to navigate that pretty well. That's spot on.
Yeah, look, it's that whole thing about male-female equality. If you really want to bring that one up, that's an incredibly controversial subject currently, and that has two sides. There's two sides to every story, with 4 daughters, poor old Scott Morrison got condemned by saying, "Of course, I'm going to be more cognizant and more in touch with women's issues because women are so important in my life." And then some fucking nasty person comes up and says, does that mean you have to have women in your life and daughters to be sensitive? That was fucking bullshit.
Yeah.
That was just nasty. That was nasty. Scott Morrison was being honest. He was being transparent. He was saying, I might have been a dinosaur in the past. I might have had very sort of sexist opinions in the past, but now that I've been exposed to so many women, I'm more in touch. And what's wrong with saying that? I mean, it was a very real, honest statement, and someone condemned him for it. I've got 4 daughters who have taught me the importance of female rights. And, I was a dinosaur before them, and I'll be the first to admit it. Because I was brought up in an Asian, very, very patriarchal family where my mum was expected to cook 3 hot meals for my dad. And so why can't I be more in touch with women because I've been exposed to women? And this lady goes, well, it's a terrible statement because does it mean that we can excuse men who don't have daughters? Well, fuck yeah. If you don't have daughters, if you've not been exposed to women, if you've just been around men all your life, then of course you're not going to be as in touch with women's issues.
And the same is right with any particular thing. If you're not part of that environment or in that situation, the context and the depth of knowledge in that field is going to be minimal. You get exposed, you have kids and daughters, and you're like, that's how they work. You're like...
Yeah, I thought that was terrible that he was condemned for saying that, but anyway.
Do you think that makes them politicians that constantly get... Do you think at some point they become completely disconnected with their voter base because of the constant bull? They're like, I can't open my fucking mouth, and because
I can't be honest.
Yeah,
absolutely. The poor bastards. You know that there are, and like you said, I was taught by one of my good friends who was a politician. He goes, Charlie, we're in a terrible situation. We all want to make a difference to the world. We want to make a difference to Australia. But how do we do that? Well, we have to be in power. How do we get in power? Well, you've got to get voted in. How do you get votes? You've got to make popular decisions. If you don't make popular decisions, you don't get the votes. And so oftentimes they make decisions based on, like you said, popularity and getting votes rather than what is they truly believe is best for the nation. And sometimes what is best for the nation isn't popular, you know. So they're stuck between a rock and a hard place, the poor bastards. You know, it'd be a terrible job. And that's why, historically, some people say that the best government is a benevolent dictator. Because if you have a dictator who can actually dictate what is best for the country, then sometimes they have to make unpopular decisions, but too bad. You know, that's what has to be done. Of course, they have to be benevolent. They have to have the interests of the country rather than their own interests. And to find someone who's that benevolent is very difficult. But a benevolent dictator would make, you know, or look at Lee Kuan Yew. Look at Lee Kuan Yew. You know, a lot of people hate him because he incarcerated a few people who didn't believe in what he had to say. But his bottom line is that he was in it for the country. He was in it for Singapore, and he made Singapore what it is today. Even though he was very much a dictator.
In one generation, didn't he turn it from a third world country into one of the, well, not leading economies, but getting up there?
No, it's one of the, in terms of per head of population and fiscal health, the country has been in the black for decades and has never been in the red.
Yeah.
It is one of the leading economic nations in the world.
Because this conversation's actually come up in the cages a few times about, do we just get a dictator that's not a dick, and do we just get rid of this democracy that doesn't? And you see, you'd be surprised at the amount of lads who are like, I think we just need someone to make decisions even though they're not popular. And yeah, he's spot on, mate.
Yeah, I know. That's why Trump got voted in. Trump didn't. There wasn't a vote for Trump. It was a vote against duplicitous career politicians. That's what it was. And bloody Trump just utilised that and monopolised that. And you know, you've got to give him credit. He was smart because he goes, oh, I know how I'm going to get in. I'm going to adopt a platform that's completely opposite to Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton was all about diplomacy, this and that, and, you know, career politician. And Trump goes, oh, I think that people don't want that anymore. And he was smart enough to get, you know, to give a narrative that was completely diametrically opposite to Clinton's. It was so sad that he ended up being a bit of a buffoon. But you know, if he'd been intelligent and real, and if he didn't have all those vested interests and his own interests, he could have made a real go of America. But unfortunately, history.
Did they say because his policies were not bad? It was just his ability to like you said, he was a bit of a buffoon, but his policies weren't too bad. In a way, if you were going to rank him as a president, he's up there with some of the better ones policy-wise, but with his ability to talk and not put himself in the shit, he sort of dropped down a fair few rankings.
Yeah, look, some people will say that, especially business people. Business people like him. But, you know, I'm very much an environmentalist, and from an environmentalist point of view, he did so much damage to the world. You know, sticking his head in the sand when it comes to environmental issues, you know, he will always be condemned for that, and deservedly so. You know, we have this amazing plan. I mean, here I am talking about all these different subjects, and I'm not even an expert, but I do have opinions. So, you know, it's your fault, Max.
100%, mate.
Well, it's Adrian's fault, taking us down these rabbit holes. But okay, if you want my opinion about the world, you know, no matter what the naysayers say, all you've got to do is be a global citizen and travel the world, and you will see the effects of global warming and, you know, what we're doing in this world. It's just terrible. And you can't stick your head in the sand. You've just got to accept it. And you've got to start making changes so that we protect our world. That's the biggest picture. That is more important than anything else. I mean, I've gone vegan, and I've gone vegan mostly for ethical reasons because I love animals. And poor old pigs and sheep and hens, they all have personalities and they all have feelings and they all feel pain and they all want to live. So, that's the reason I went vegan. But the thing I'm most proud of is that the current consumption of meat is unsustainable. 20,000 litres of water to create 1 kilogram of beef, that is unsustainable. So by going vegan, I'm making a huge impact on the environment. I can continue riding my motorbike. I continue driving my car because that has such a minimal effect on the environment compared to the meat industry. So, if everyone went vegan, you could have 3 or 4 cars and drive them every day, and the planet will be sustained.
Have you had any detrimental? Do you feel good? I mean, because you hear stories of people feeling awesome, going vegan, and not ethical. Like they feel really good for the first sort of 6 months, a year, and then they sort of drop off feeling.
No, that's bullshit. I feel terrible. I love meat. I just love it. And my whole life was eating, and from Singapore and Chinese family, and oh my God, I just miss meat every day. My blood tests are all better. I was pre-diabetic, and that's better. I had a lesion in my heart that was only less than 25%, but that seems to have disappeared. So, there's all the health benefits of going vegan, sure, but no, I don't feel better for it. I always felt good anyway. I'm not doing it for myself. I'm doing it for the animals and for the planet mostly. But the added benefit is, it is healthy. It's very healthy to go vegan.
Jess is going to love this. One of our office girls, she's an absolute advocate. She's an ethical vegan as well. She's going to love this, mate. We're not going to hear the end of it.
Well, all you guys should go vegan. I'm telling you, it's good for you. It's actually good for you, good for the planet, good for everyone. And I can see Keegan there's got a dog. He obviously loves animals.
Yeah, don't eat your dog, Keegan.
The intelligence of that dog and the feeling of that dog is not dissimilar to that of a pig.
She's too stringy. She's too stringy and old. I wouldn't eat her anyway.
Yeah, but Keegan, I bet you eat pork. And those poor little piggies, they have the same feelings, and they have the intelligence of a 3 or 4-year-old child. And we keep them in pens. We keep them in these terrible confinements where they get ulcers, they can't move, and then we eat them. Ugh. It's just
God, why do they have to be so delicious? Maybe I'll give it a go. Maybe I'll after this. I'll give a little 6-week vegan run at it. Who knows? Adrian, I'll be fired. You watch.
Don't do a cold turkey, Max.
Hey?
Don't go off cold turkey because you'll fail. So I tried a few years ago to go vegetarian cold turkey, and I failed miserably. You do it 1 meat at a time. So first meat, get rid of pork. Okay, just get no pork at all. Next one, 6 months later, or 3 months later, or 3 weeks later, get rid of beef. Next week, get rid of chicken. Next week, get rid of dairy products. The dairy industry is crueler than the meat industry. So if you can get rid of dairy products, you're going to lose weight immediately. You're going to feel healthier. And those poor old cows that are raped and inseminated and fucking treated terribly, at least you'll save some of them.
Fuck.
All this is doing is making me hungry. It's 9 a.m. and all I'm thinking about now is bacon.
So, but outside of that for nutrition and I just want to know, like, a look in the brain of someone who's at the elite level and what you go through before going into surgery to save someone's life. Is there a process that you do, like meditation? Is there things that you won't do the night before because it would, I'm not saying you're not going to go out and swing off a bottle of whiskey the night before. I don't know. Is it?
Oh my God. No, absolutely. I mean, look, I treat my patients like they were a member of my own family. So would I want my surgeon to be a big, fat, unfit, drinking guy? Absolutely not. I'd want him to be at his peak physical condition when he's doing my brain tumor, which could take him up to 6 to 12 hours to take out. And so he has to be in his peak physical condition. If he isn't, then he's not giving me his best shot at this. So it's my responsibility to my patients to be as fit as I can be and as focused as I can be. So yeah, I never drink alcohol. I don't drink alcohol anyway, but I always make sure I get a good night's sleep the night before. I make sure that I get in early to the operating room and stay focused. I look at the X-rays. All my staff know that they can't interrupt me when I'm, getting in the zone. And then I maintain a fitness regime so I can operate for hours and hours at an end and not get tired, and physically do it. So, I keep very fit. I'm 64 years old, but I'm, I still go paddling in the mornings. I walk to work.
Mate, I thought you were 40-something.
Yeah, no. Again, I think it's my responsibility to my patients to stay fit. So,
How do you... I know we're completely different, and that's why I'm not a brain surgeon or a neurosurgeon. Whatever. I'm a fucking monkey. I couldn't... 12 hours, I'd be bored after half. I'd cut the brain open and be like, yep, might go get a brew. How the fuck do you do it for 12 hours?
Yeah, well, you work your way up. I mean, yeah, I can remember doing a 26-hour operation when I was in America. And I was buggered after that. I took a whole day off after that. But now if I did a 26-hour operation, I know that I'd take off 2 or 3 days. There's just no way I could do it. Because I did a 12-hour operation not so long ago, and that sort of, made me tired for the next day or so. But so you do get used to it. You do reach your peak, physical peak, and after that, a lot of experience. A lot of it is experience and knowing how to pace yourself and things like that. But it's a job like any other job. I'm sure people say to you, how do you do it?
It involves with drinking, but they're like, I don't know how you drink 4 liters. And you're like, well, I'm not allowed to anymore because it ruins your brain. So I'm not allowed to eat pork, and I'm not allowed to drink, and I'm not allowed to smoke cigarettes. So I don't know what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. Not allowed to do those things because we work for a proactive mental health charity. So you're 12 hours. Is that this guy's brain's cut open, girl, whoever? Do you have breaks? What is going on in there when that's...
It's very hard to take a break because you get on a roll, and it's like that game of concentration where you turn over a few cards and then you turn them back over again. You've got to remember where they are. Well, when you're operating on a brain tumour, you're operating on different areas of the tumour, and you might get some bleeding in that area, so you pack it off and you stop and you go to another area. And so if you take a break, you kind of lose your train of thought, and you lose you lose that momentum. So with that 26-hour operation, for example, I took a break at midnight and went to the toilet, sat down to eat something, and then unfortunately the surgeon who took over got into some bleeding troubles and called me back in again. So I don't think he would have got into those. Well, I wouldn't have gone into those bleeding troubles because I knew exactly where that blood vessel was. So yeah, I now don't take breaks. I just go all the way through, however long it takes.
That's mental.
It is crazy, because it is. It's a skill that we develop and that that you have to do to do brain surgery. It's just one of those things. And I can remember watching a game of tennis once with Nadal and Djokovic. Well, it could have been Djokovic and Federer. Anyway, whatever it was, it went for like 6 hours. And I can remember the commentator going, "Oh my God, these people, they're just such amazing athletes, and they've got amazing levels of fitness, and here they are, playing tennis for 6 hours. How can anyone do that?" And I thought, you fucking, idiot. You don't realise that I'm operating like this with my arms up, looking down a microscope with someone's life in my hands for 12 hours without sitting down every 5 minutes for a cup, for a Staminade and a little break. You're there the entire time, standing up with your arms up like this, concentrating, and I thought, oh well, that degree of athleticism is what we display every day. And it's not. No one ever pays us millions of dollars for it.
No, I think this is a good point. So I was thinking about this the other day, and we used to talk about, and I was thinking about court jesters and gladiators in the old days. They were just literally entertainment for the masses, and then they might die, they might get fed to lions, or you might throw things at them. And then the tables have turned where now you're getting young football dudes who don't have much to offer the world, like the NRL is constantly getting in trouble for being a little bit.
You're going to get in so much trouble with this podcast. Now, no sportsman's ever going to listen to your podcast again.
Yeah, we've got an ambassador to that. Hopefully he'll spin it round for us. But I don't know why we pay and idolize these, sports stars, and movie stars is the big one for me. Movie stars, I'm like, why do you get to have a political say? Why you're literally a court jester? We pay you to make us laugh or cry or feel things. I don't need you to talk to me about the economic crisis of the world or the. do you know what I mean? And like I said, there's people. There was a lady that was one of the first. She was going up into space as she was doing. I can't remember. I know it super sucks. She was doing something really important, and on the same day, I think Cardi B released a new single, and she was twerking at the Emmys or something, and she got all this coverage, whereas this girl who'd studied her whole life to be an astronaut, to go to space, to do this groundbreaking nothing. We're literally focused on that particular sect of people. It perplexes and pisses me off.
Yeah. Well, everything's relative, Like here you are interviewing me as if I'm some sort of celebrity, and my scientist that works his butt off for minimal pay. He comes in at midnight to take some brain tumour off me so we can grow it in the lab. That poor bastard doesn't get any recognition, and which is really sad because he has devoted his life for the betterment of mankind to try and find a cure for brain cancer. And there he is slaving away in a little lab somewhere, getting paid, like just above poverty wage and no recognition. And he's the one that we should be, lauding as one of mankind's greatest assets. So everything is relative. I think you've got to understand that these people are getting paid millions of dollars for their uniqueness. So, Brad Pitt, there's no other Brad Pitt. So that's why it's only Brad Pitt. He can't employ someone to do what he does. He can't, so it's him. And that's why he gets paid the big bickies. But similarly, someone who takes out a brain tumour that no one else in the world can take out, well, they can't be duplicated. So, I think they should probably get the same amount of credit as someone who's a unique actor.
Yeah, I think I'd have to disagree. I think someone who's a brain surgeon who literally saves people's lives would, if there wasn't Brad Pitt, Hollywood would cast somebody else, some other good-looking dude who just decides to eat in all his scenes as his little hack for being a good actor. They'll find some other pretty-looking dude. I don't know about brain surgeons and people sending people to Mars.
Anyway, yeah, well, let's get off that subject next.
I'll bring it back.
I don't want to piss off every elite sportsman, every actor, every person who gets paid a lot of money for their uniqueness. And but yeah, you're right. Society does applaud some funny groups of. Just look at influencers. Oh my God! Look at the power and the money that influencers get paid, and sometimes all they're doing is just taking selfies, and they have. They know how to Photoshop well.
Absolutely.
No problem. Just jumping back quickly to when you're doing long surgeries, do you allow yourself to take caffeine?
No, Adrian, no. Caffeine is a CNS stimulant, a central nervous system stimulant. It's a known drug containing xanthine. It stimulates the central nervous system, and it therefore gives you a micro tremor. Sometimes it even gives you a macro tremor where you can actually see someone get a tremor after they drink coffee.
Yeah, every morning.
Working down a microscope and everything's magnified and you drink a cup of coffee. I'm telling you, when my residents and my fellows, when I'm teaching them and I let them operate down under the microscope, if they've drunk coffee, I can tell. because they have this fine little tremor.
So there's, I mean, you brought up Staminate, but there's outside of Staminate that's 26 hours. What was that?
Yeah, no. The nurses bring a glass of water for me. So is that interference? Can you hear interference?
Yeah. That's.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, so, I'll drink some water out of a straw, or I'll bring some. Before I got pre-diabetes, they used to bring in, lollies and things like that. But now they just bring in some nuts that I chew on, sometimes you need. But sometimes, the adrenaline's pumping. You're so focused, you don't even feel hungry until the operation's over, and then you start feeling hungry. It's like, going to the toilet. You'd think you'd have to go to the toilet after 12 hours, but you don't. Somehow the body knows that you can't do it, so it concentrates the urine. And, you don't actually go to the toilet until you finish. And then it's, it's like pissing out molasses. It's terrible. But the body's an amazing organ that can actually put things on hold for you.
Yeah, that's a function? Is it? So, I mean, I've done that when we've been outfield with the military, and I knew there wasn't going to be anywhere to stop for the next day to go to the toilet, and subconsciously I just never got the urge. But then I always noticed that I was pissing thick and stinky.
Well, thanks for sharing that with us. But it's just not dissimilar to a footballer who breaks his leg and continues playing football, and then at the end he realises his leg's broken. And so we're back the full circle. We're back now to the power of the mind. The mind is amazing, absolutely amazing that it can do that. It can secrete opioids like endorphins and enkephalins. It's basically blunt out and block out pain until there's time to accept that you've got pain. It's crazy. It's the same reason why people who are dying from cancer, if they want to stay alive for a wedding anniversary or Christmas, they do, and then they die after Christmas or die after the event. It happens so often that they actually keep themselves alive until they're ready to go. How does that happen? I mean, it's inexplicable when it comes to medical science. It's all about the power of the mind.
I try and input, as you can probably hear, I'm in Darwin, and we've got it sounds like it's a torrential rainstorm crashing overhead.
Okay.
But so hopefully, if it gets too bad, I'll just mute out and let Adrian round us out. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
I've only got one major last question that I need to get out to bring it back to what we were talking about before, as in things that can keep your mind younger, healthier, and happier. Supplements. There's a kind of nootropic or nootropic, however you pronounce it. They're going off at the moment. Their popularity's going through the roof. They're all over social media as products to buy. Would you recommend any, or is there any other supplements that you would recommend that are great for your brain?
So if you go vegan, you won't get enough vitamin B12. So that's a supplement a vegan has to take to maintain health. If you're non-vegan, then virtually every essential amino acid, essential fatty acid, essential protein, or essential vitamin is in a normal diet. And so all those things are in a vegan diet as well, except for B12. But in a non-vegan diet, it's very rare for you to have to supplement your diet with it. So I'm a great believer in trying to be a little bit more natural, and I don't like introducing stimulants I've only ever taken Panadol twice in my life, and I don't like antibiotics and stuff. So I'm very much different to the majority of people, where I actually try and heal myself and try and be a little bit more natural with things. So no, look, I'm not an authority on it, but as a general rule, I don't believe in supplements.
Yeah, right.
Remember, everything has side effects too. There's this thing called hypervitaminosis A and D. So people who take multivitamins and bulk up on vitamins, sometimes taking too many vitamins can cause pretty serious conditions. So I'm a strong believer in trying to be as natural as possible.
Well, that's a bugger.
Well, having said that, then of course the critics come out and go, well, the cavemen used to eat meat, so why can't we eat meat? And well, slavery used to be accepted.
That's the ethical side of it. I mean, I've tried a couple of different diets. Nutrition was kind of my focus for nearly a decade, and I've tried 2 weeks eating vegan. I broke out. I had like autoimmune response and had like rashes everywhere. I don't know, it's because more than likely too many legumes, but I've convinced myself that my body requires meat at some level. And okay, so nutrition.
Well, as you know, the strongest man in the world is a vegan. So Djokovic is a vegan. I mean, some great athletes are vegans. So you don't need meat. You actually don't need it. But I will accept this. I will accept that some people are different to others, and so the fact that you came out in those rashes, I think that's probably, you're not bullshitting. It's real, and so you probably can't tolerate that high dose of legumes, but you could actually build up to it. Again, that whole concept of not doing it cold turkey, just do it slowly. I think you'd do a whole lot better by doing it that way.
Yeah, mate, certainly some challenging ideas. I'm gonna have to give it a go. I'm gonna give it a go, mate. I'll let you know how I go, Charlie.
Give it a go,
mate. I just want to say thanks for coming on, and I couldn't keep up quick enough. I was furiously typing in the background to Adrian and Keegan, the wealth of knowledge coming on. I think our audience is going to get a lot out of it, mate, and it was great for you to take. I know you're busy, and I think our audience is going to get a lot out of it, mate. And we'd like to keep getting you on if you're keen to come on and maybe dispel myths as they come up in the social space, or if you're keen to be involved with Swiss 8, mate, we'd love to have you.
Oh, I love it. I love the whole concept of Swiss 8. I looked at your website. It's fantastic. It's absolutely much needed. And so I congratulate you on your efforts with that. I mean, you could have easily just come back and forgotten about your colleagues and the whole concept of mental health. But the fact that you've taken it by the balls and you're doing something about it is very commendable. And so anything I can do, I'd be very happy to help out.
Thanks, mate. Have you got anything coming up in your calendar that we can sort of spruik out on our socials, or anything coming up for you with your foundation? Or
well, that'd be lovely. The Charlie Teo Foundation raises money for brain cancer research. Brain cancer kills more children in Australia than any other disease. Not only any other cancer, but any other disease. Kills more young adults than any other cancer. And the Charlie Teo Foundation runs lean and mean. We have very low overheads, and we fund disruptive thinkers, people who think outside the box, and we are very, very dependent on grassroots fundraising. Our next big fundraiser is May the 1st, which is a dinner that we have. We have to limit the numbers, but if you'd like to support the foundation and those people suffering from brain cancer, we'd love to see you there. You just have to go to the website, the Charlie Teo Foundation website.
No worries. Thanks very much, mate. And we'll get everyone to have a look, and we'll spruik that over all of our social channels, mate. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.
Cheers.